Hello. So today we are going to be discussing the differences between the prepositions por and para. Now these prepositions are generally problematic because they can be translated as for in English, but as you'll see today, they can have many different translations because they're used in so many different contexts. Okay? And another thing that I should mention is that por and para are not the only prepositions that can be used in these contexts. There are numerous prepositions that can be used, but because we are talking about por and para, then we have to talk about them, right? Okay? So we will commence this lesson by going through the uses of por. So the first use of por is going to be to give a reason or a cause. So why did something happen? Okay? Or why something happens. So no podemos ir a la playa por la lluvia. Right? So we cannot go to the beach because of the rain. So why can't we go to the beach? Por la lluvia, because of the rain. And you would notice here that I have some expressions in English, and these expressions are intended to help you to understand what por would mean in this context. So because por is giving you a reason, it would generally translate as because of, as a result of, or due to, right? So why can't we go to the beach? Por la lluvia. Next example. La profesora castigó al alumno por no completar la tarea. So the teacher punished the student for not completing the task. In this case, por, it means for, it is translated as for, but for has the same meaning as these expressions, okay? So the teacher punished the student for not completing the task. Why did the teacher punish the student? Because he or she did not complete the task. And you would notice that in example 1, por is followed by a noun, and example 2, por is followed by a verb in the infinitive. So when it comes to reason or cause, por is going to be used with nouns or verbs, verb in the infinitive. Okay? So that's the first use of por, to give a reason or cause of an event. 2, an agent in the passive voice. So we use por when we want to introduce an agent. And an agent is going to be the entity that performs an action in a sentence. In the passive voice, you know the subject goes into object position, right? So este libro fue escrito por Juan. Juan. So Juan is the author of the book. Juan is the person who performs the activity, right? But Juan is in object position. So this is what we call a passive construction, or the passive voice. So this means that this book was written by Juan. So in this case, por would mean by. All right? If we wanted to put this sentence in the active voice, we would say Juan escribió este libro. Right? So we use por in this case when we want to introduce an agent, which is the entity that performs the action in the passive voice. So it has to be in the passive voice, okay? So that's use number 2. 3, someone's benefit. And in this case, someone's benefit would mean on behalf of someone, okay? So you're doing something in the interest of someone else, okay? Trabajo por María. I work for María. This doesn't mean that María is my boss or employer. It means that perhaps I'm replacing María. Let's say María is unwell and she's unable to work. Well, I am assuming her responsibilities for her. So her work is still going to be done, but it's going to be done by me. So she is still going to benefit from my actions. So that's what this is saying in this case. I work for Maria means that I'm working to benefit Maria, right? And lo hice por mi familia. I did it for my family. So that means that whatever action I did, my family is intended to benefit. Okay? Now, pay attention here. You would realize that this could also translate as I did it because of my family. Right? But that would be a different meaning. Right? That would be given the cause. So if you translate this as saying I did it because of my family, then you're saying that the reason that you did whatever you did, it was because of your family. So your family caused you to do it. Whatever it is, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that you did. But that would be a slightly different meaning. That would be different. But we're talking about poor being used for someone's benefit. So in this case, we would translate this as I did it on behalf of my family or I did it for my family. Meaning that my family is intended to benefit from my actions. Okay? And 4, quantity of time. So we use por anytime we want to convey the amount of time that was spent doing an activity. Okay? Tocamos el piano por 2 horas. We played the piano for 2 hours. So whatever is going to follow por in this case is going to give you the amount of time. Right? So we played the piano for 2 hours. I could take out 2 horas and I could say por 1 hora, por 30 minutos, what have you. But we use por when we want to express the amount of time that an activity is performed for, right? And of course, you would ask the question of how long. So how long did we play the piano? Por 2 horas, for 2 hours, okay? So these are 4 contexts in which por is used, and we continue. So we move to use number 5, and it's still dealing with time. So we use por when we want to express frequency, so how often an activity is performed. Ella estudia 3 veces por semana. She studies 3 times weekly, or every week. So por, whatever follows por in this case, is going to give you how often the activity is performed. So if I want to say yearly, I would say por año. If I wanted to say monthly, I would say por mes. Right? So por plus the amount of time would give you the frequency in this case, because earlier it said 3 times, 3 veces, right? So that's telling us how often she performs the activity. So how often does she study? 3 veces por semana, 3 times weekly. All right, 6, moment in the day, right? So you have AM, PM. So you have morning, afternoon, or evening, or night, okay? So yo hago ejercicio por la mañana. This means I work out in the morning, right? So this is not really specific because the morning is a long period. It could be 5 o'clock in the morning, it could be 8 o'clock, it could be 10 o'clock, it could even be 11:30, all right? But it's morning. That's the point. So when do I work out? Por la mañana, in the morning, right? So anytime we want to talk about the time of day, we use por followed by the time, right? Por la mañana, por la tarde, or por la noche, okay? 7, approximate time. An approximate means estimation. It's not precise, right? So, voy a llegar por Navidad. I am going to arrive around Christmas, right? So, around means that it is not precise. So, around Christmas, what do you mean? 3 days before Christmas, a day before Christmas. When, right? So we don't know exactly when you're going to arrive. But saying por Navidad, this means that it's going to be around Christmas time, right? Could be 2 days before, um, a day after, 2 days after, but it's going to be close to that time. That's why it's called approximate. And in this case, por would mean around, right? So anytime we want to mention an approximate time, we would use por. A, route or transit. So, viajamos por España. We travel through Spain. So what this is saying is that we are going through the country. We are traveling throughout the country, right? But it could also mean that we travel through Spain to get somewhere else, like in transit. So let's say you are taking a flight and your destination is, I don't know, let's say Brazil. This is just for the sake of the example, Brazil. Or rather, yeah, this is just for the sake of the example, Brazil. Your destination is Brazil, but one of the countries that the plane has to stop in is Spain. So we would say viajamos por España in that case. We travel through Spain. So Spain is a stop on the way to get to Brazil, right? So this can have two meanings. This could mean either you're traveling through the country itself, like going to the various attractions and what have you, or it could mean that you just stop in Spain to get somewhere else, right? So that's why it's called a route, because the route would be the path taken to get somewhere, right? Estoy caminando por la playa. So I am walking along the beach. So this is where I am right now. I'm walking along the sand on the beach. Walking on the sand along the beach, right? So this would represent where I am passing, my passage, right? So this is what por is used for. It's going to be used for a route, a passage, or a transit. When we want to say that we want to get some, when we want to mention where we are in relation to somewhere else, we would use por for that. Okay? And 9, approximate location. So again, like time, this is not precise. So, vivo por esta zona. I live around this area. So it's not exact, right? Around this area could be 3 blocks from here, 4 blocks from here, or even a block from here. But the point is, it is close, but it's not precise, all right? So just like time, approximate location will carry the same meaning around, all right? And we continue. So we move on to usage 10 of por. So we're going to use por for movement or direction, okay? So él entró por la puerta. He enters through the door. So in this case, por is going to mean through, right? So from which direction did he enter? Through the door. Por la puerta. So when we want to describe the direction that something came from or something is going, we would say por means through. But por in this case means through. So anytime we want to express the direction of through or movement, we use por. 11, exchange. So an exchange, of course, means that something is given for something else. So, te daré un beso por ese reloj. I will give you a kiss for that watch. So you could, por in this case could be, you could say that could translate as, I will give you a kiss in exchange for that watch. So you would still have to put the for, right? So, I will give you a kiss in exchange for that watch. Te daré un beso por ese reloj. So anytime you want to express an exchange, you would use por. 12, price or transaction, right? So, pagué $20 por este libro. I paid $20 for this book. So por is expressing the amount of money you would have paid for that book. So pagué $20 por este libro. I paid $20 for that book, for this book, right? So that's giving you, it is telling you that a transaction took place, and even though the price occurs before por, but it's giving you how much money you would have paid and for the whatever item it is. So in this case, the item that you are purchasing follows por, right? So that's buying. So pagué $20 por ese libro. But vendí mi coche por $5,000. So you see, in this case, what follows the por, when I'm selling something, the amount I sell it for is going to follow por, and when I'm buying something, whatever it is that I'm buying is going to follow por. So you see the difference there. But either way, both of these sentences express a transaction, right? So we would use por when we're talking about either buying something or selling something. All right? 13, means of communication or transport. And in this case, por would mean by or via. Llego a la escuela por coche. I arrive to school by car. How do I arrive to school? Por coche, by car. So in this case, when we're expressing the means of transport, we would just, whatever follows the por would be the vehicle or the means. So I could say por autobus, por tren, right? Any mode of transport we would put here. If we put any mode of transport after por, that would express how we usually travel, right? In this case, I said por coche, so how do I normally arrive to school? By car, right? Similarly, when it comes to communication, hablo por teléfono. So we say por, we use por, and then we're going to mention the mode of communication. In this case, I use teléfono, telephone. I could say por correo electrónico, por email, all right? Which would be email. So once we mention the mode of communication afterwards, that would express how we normally, communicate. Just like how here, after the por, you would put the mode of transport. That would express how we usually get around. So this would express how we usually get around here, and this would express how we usually communicate. So por is going to be used to describe the means by which we communicate or travel. All right? 14, gratitude. So this is where you want to express thank you, right? So gracias por ayudarme. Thanks for helping me. And you would notice that the verb that follows the por is in the infinitive, right? So when you want to express gratitude, the verb that comes after will be in the infinitive, right? Well, in this construction, right? So yes, of course there are other ways that you could express gratitude, but this is just a simple way to do it. Gracias por ayudarme. Okay? 15, distribution. So distribution means taking something that is large and breaking it down into smaller units or dividing it. Okay? So el viaje cuesta $300 por persona, right? So obviously the trip would be a lot of money, a huge sum of money, Let's just say a huge sum of money. And if we wanted to take that amount and divide it per person, this is what we would do. It would be $300. This is what each person would have to pay. $300, right? Per person. So you could have a trip that's, I don't know, $20,000 in total. And if you break it down per person, each person will have to pay $300. That would mean that there will have to be a lot of people, of course, but yeah. So distribution is just where you take something that's large and break it down into smaller pieces. Distribute it. How is it distributed, right? So el viaje cuesta $300 por persona. The trip costs $300 per person. All right. So we continue. So we move on to the final two uses of por, right? 16, multiplication. And in this case, por is going to be by or times. So dos por dos son cuatro. 2 by 2 is 4. Now you may see son and say, well, shouldn't that be es? But you don't have to be literal with the Spanish, right? So you know it's plural, so dos por dos son cuatro would translate as 2 by 2 is 4, right? 2 times 2 is 4. So we're going to use por when it comes to multiplication, okay? And 17, units of measurement. So yo conducía a 50 kilómetros por hora. I was driving at 50 kilometers per hour. So this is a unit of speed, la velocidad, okay? And compramos gasolina por galón. Again, por galón would be a unit of measurement, right? We buy gasoline by the gallon. All right. Of course, there are other examples, but these are just two. Okay. So anytime you are expressing a unit of measurement, you would use por, right? So sometimes it could be per, it could be by in this case, or it could be like I said, it could be per or by, depending on what is the unit, right? Because all of them are not going to be translated the same, right? So these are just two examples, right? So these are the 17 uses of por, and now we are going to proceed to para. So we move on to para. The first use of para is going to be to express an objective or an aim, okay? So in this case, para is going to translate as in order to. So estudio para mejorar mis notas. I study in order to improve my grades. Now, I must mention that this theme is often confused with a reason. So many times when there's confusion with regard to por and para, it is usually this theme, which is this a reason or is this an objective, right? Because you may look at this sentence and say, estudio para mejorar mis notas. You may say, well, para mejorar mis notas, to improve my grades. Wouldn't that be a reason? So wouldn't that be the reason why you're studying? And yes, in a sense, yes, it is the reason why you're studying. But the reason that you're studying is to improve your grades. So that's more an objective than a reason, right? So that's a slight difference there. That's a slight difference. The reason you're studying is to improve your grades, and that will represent an objective or an aim, okay? So, and another pointer, you will realize because we are talking about objective, in this case, para is always going to be followed by a verb in the infinitive, right? Because you're talking about an objective in order to do something, right? So it would always be followed by a verb in the infinitive. But this theme is oftentimes confused with por because you have to differentiate whether this is a reason or an objective. And the lines and the differences between them can be very subtle. So this theme, like I said, oftentimes would cause the most confusion when it comes to por and para. But para is going to give you an objective, and it is going to be followed by an infinitive. Okay? 2. Para is going to give us the purpose or the use of something. So, este medicamento es para la tos. This medication is for the cough. So, what is the purpose of the medication? The purpose of the medication, what's the purpose? It's for the cough. It's not to cure, we didn't say to cure the cough, because again, if we had to say, if we said este medicamento es para curar la tos, then we would use the infinitive, because that would be the objective, right? But because we're expressing purpose or use, we just use a noun here. So this medication is for the cough, right? But if we wanted to express an objective, we would say, well, to be honest, let me not say that. When I said este medicamento es para curar la tos, that could also be a purpose. Not necessarily an objective, but it could be a purpose as well. That could be a purpose. So I stand corrected. So if I say este medicamento es para la tos, is para curar la tos, that's also fine. That's also, and that would also be considered a purpose, right? Or use. So what is the medication used for? Para curar la tos. 3. Recipient. So when we want to say that something is for someone, we would use para. So este libro es para one. This book is for one. So one is the intended destination. But this destination is a person, right? So he is the one who is supposed to receive the book, right? So este libro es para one means that one is the person to receive the book, or the recipient. 4. Employment. Trabajo para Pedro. I work for Pedro. This means that Pedro is my boss or employer, right? And it isn't limited to persons, it could be companies as well, because I have here Trabajo para Digicel. I work for Digicel. And if you don't know what Digicel is, that is a company that offers mobile phone services and TV services in the Caribbean, right? So it could be a person or a company, doesn't matter. But you use para to express employment. And 5, deadline. So deadline would answer the question of for when or by what time. Tenemos que completar la tarea para mañana. We have to complete the task by tomorrow. So mañana would represent the deadline. It must be done before tomorrow, right? It must be done by tomorrow. So anytime we want to express a deadline, we would put the time after para, right? So yes, tenemos que completar la tarea para mañana. When do we have to complete the task? Para mañana, by tomorrow. Okay? Alright, these are 5 uses of para, and we continue. Okay, so we move on to the final uses of para. Number 6, special dates or occasions. So, voy a visitar a mi familia para Navidad. So this means that Navidad, Christmas, is going to be a specific time that I'm going to visit. Not a few days before, not a few days after, but that specific time, right? So anytime we're talking about a specific date or occasion, we're going to use para, right? So this could almost translate as on Christmas, right? But for Christmas would carry the same meaning, right? But it deals with specificity. So on that day, right? 7, destination. Viajamos para España. We travel to Spain. So Spain is where we are headed, is the country that we're headed to, right? So we use para when we want to talk about destinations, right? So yes. 8. Movement or direction. Mira para la ventana. And of course, this is a command, right? And this is an affirmative command. And you would say, look towards the window. So, where to look or in which direction to look? Towards the window, right? So, para in this case, when it comes to direction, means towards or to, right? So look towards the window. Anytime you want to express movement towards something or the direction of to, you would use para, right? 9. Opinion or perspective. Para mí hace frío. In my opinion, it is cold, right? So of course, this is just how I feel. This is not a fact, this is just how I feel. So we use para when we want to talk about opinions of someone. So I could say, el examen era fácil para ella. The exam was easy for her, or in her opinion. You see what I mean? So para is going to be used to express opinion or perspective. 10, and this is the final usage, comparison or standard. Para un niño, él es muy alto. For a child, he is very tall. So what this means is that the standard for a child, you would expect certain things from a child, right? But this child surpasses that standard. So in a sense, it is a comparison because you're comparing him with the average child. But he surpasses the standard or the average, right? So we use para in this case. So para un niño, so for a child, he is very tall. And this theme is very difficult to let's just say, to explain. So many times you may see it being mentioned under different themes and whatnot. But this is my way of conveying the meaning, right? So it's a comparison or a standard, right? Alright, so these are the 10 uses of para. And now we are going to proceed to a quiz to see if you have grasped everything in the lecture. Alright, so we move on to the quiz. Place por or para in the spaces below based on the context. So you'll have to place por or para in the spaces below based on the context. And of course, we would have just gone through the context in which por and para are used, right? So, yes, this is a test. And of course, you can pause the video and do them before I complete them, right? Okay, so 1. Este regalo es ti. What is a regalo? A regalo is a gift. Therefore, this would have to be para because remember, para is used for a recipient. So this is saying this gift is for you. So the theme emerging here would be recipient. So, recipient. So that would have to be es para ti. So this is saying that this gift is for you. Exactly. So number 1 would be para. Number 2, la fiesta es mi cumpleaños. So you know that fiesta is party and mi cumpleaños is birthday. So essentially you're saying the party is for my birthday. But what is the for in this case mean? What does the for mean? Is it a objective or is it a reason? Let's see. So when you're saying that the party is for my birthday, let's take out for and replace it with the other expressions that we would have encountered earlier. So the party is because of my birthday. Okay, that makes sense. So let's look at para now. Objective. The party is in order to my birthday? No. So para cannot work. This means that por is the appropriate answer here. Because what this is saying is that the party is that my birthday is the reason for the party. So you could take pour from there and say the party is because of my birthday, which should be the meaning of for, right? The for wouldn't be a purpose in this case. No, that would be a reason, right? So my birthday is the reason for the party, or the reason why I'm having the party, right? So the theme here would be reason, right? Reason. So the party is for my birthday. And like I said, this theme is often confused with objective, right? Like I said earlier, this is probably the most common source of confusion when it comes to pour and para, right? So 3. Sarah se enfermó como resultado tuve que trabajar ella. So you know that this is talking about replacing someone, because if you look earlier, it says she fell ill, she got sick. So that means she was unable to work. And pour is used to talk about doing something for someone else's benefit or replacing someone. So pour would be our answer here. Pour ella. We're not talking about Sarah being your boss. No, we're talking about working on behalf of Sarah, right? So pour would be our answer here, and it would be someone's benefit, right? Someone's benefit. And we could say that, okay, let's translate. It says Sarah fell ill as a result. I had to work for her. And for in this case would mean on behalf of, right? For would mean on behalf of, right? So let's continue. 4. Ella, el examen era difícil. Okay? So this is talking about perspective, right? So this means that we need para ella. So you could say for her or in her opinion. So in her opinion, the exam was difficult, right? Right. 5. El avión Barbados sale al mediodía. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, Barbados, is Barbados the destination or is it the route? Most likely the destination, because it's the only country mentioned. So destination. That means that we need para. So the plane to Barbados, you could say far to, but far would mean towards in this case. So you can still use far here, but I'm going to put to. Plane to Barbados leaves at mediodía, midday. All right. And 6. Pagué $5 esta bebida. Obviously, you see money, so we're talking about a transaction, right? So transaction. And what do we use with transactions? We use pour. And you know what I told you when you were saying that you're purchasing something, whatever comes after pour is usually going to be the item that you purchased, right? So the item I purchased would have been this drink. So I paid $5 for this drink. All right. So I hope that this wasn't too difficult and that you understand the differences between por and para. Gracias por ver y hasta la vista.